An EVP is a manifesto of everything a business has to offer an employee. A well-structured and thought-out employee value proposition helps differentiate your business and not only attract but retain top talent. It's so important that Castle & Clark have teamed up with Flair to tell you all about EVPs and, more importantly, how to build your own. Enjoy the webinar that follows.
Hello and welcome to this webinar where we're going to be exploring an EVP, Employee Value Proposition, to help you attract and retain top talent. Now, before I do the introductions, let me just thank our sponsors who without we would not be putting this event on. So, in alphabetical order, if I can get this right, Beam Recruit, Blue Bay Recruitment, Bond Patrick and Castleton Clark. So thank you guys, much appreciated. Today, I'm joined by my partner in crime, Peter. Hello, Pete. How are you?
Hello, Mike. Hello, everybody. I'm very good, and I'm very excited to be here to talk about EVPs, a subject close to my heart.
He's easily excited, just so you all know. Okay, and our chat master for the day is Kirsty Elizabeth. How are you, Kirsty?
I'm very good, thank you. And yes, I am indeed chat master. So let me just cover a little bit of housekeeping. For those who are watching, there is a recording that's going to be made available to you afterwards. So keep that under account. And we are also going to be using the chat function of Zoom today. Multiple reasons for this, one of which is it is completely anonymous if you use it. So to get everybody started and to kind of get everybody using the chat, could you let me know a yes or a no answer? Have you struggled to hire talent in the last 6 to 12 months? Have you struggled to hire talent in the last 6 to 12 months? Yes or no in the answer box, please. And while you're there, if you think of it, what's the top thing that you think candidates are looking for when looking for a new job?
Okay, thank you very much, Kirsty. And I think what I'll do, just whilst we wait for those answers to come in, is just whiz through the agenda for this session. So here we go. Okay, so we're going to start and explore what an EVP is, obviously, and why it's important. I mean, I think people probably know, or I've got a version of it, but we want just one version of it. So we're going to do that. Then there's two parts to an EVP. We call it a Christmas tree EVP. So, but rather than spoil the effect for later, we've basically got peripheral EVP elements, and then we've got fundamental EVP elements, things you actually have to have. We're going to go through those in some detail. And then at the end, we're just going to have a little moment on how to promote your EVP, because, you know, having a great EVP is awesome, but if people don't see it, you might just as well not have a great EVP, quite frankly. So it's very important to us that we get it out there. So we're going to talk to you some things you should do around that as well. Okay, so going to stop sharing, come back to Kirsty. What have we got coming in?
So we haven't had a huge amount of answers, and I just want to check that everybody can use the chat, because it says to hosts and panelists, not attendees. So I'm just figuring out if I can figure out what's going on with that. But
if not, we could put them in the Q&As.
Yeah, there are some in the Q&A. Yes,
yeah.
The chat seems to be disabled. I'm going to work on that and see the answer. So for the second, please use the Q&A while I just sort of scurry around in the background, figuring out what's going on.
I think I can answer that one.
We'll come back to those, yeah, in a little while. Okay.
I think I can just step in. I'm pretty sure that it's not going to be something we can turn on without exiting the webinar. So we will use the Q&A function for the rest of the show. If anybody wants to put in an anonymous question, you can do that. It's a setting on the Q&A page. Just keep an eye out for it.
Okay, thank you.
So,
right.
Let's crack on, shall we, Mike? Let's get into the meat of it. So we are here today to discuss EVPs, and we've got a lot of attendees. So hopefully we're all on the same page with what the answer to this is going to be. What is an EVP, and why is it important?
Okay, so employee value proposition, right? It's a bit of a fancy name, but the best way to think of it, using this analogy, it's like a shop window. So if you can get people to the shop window to look in, what they see should attract them. It should be quite compelling for them, attractive, and want them to really know more. And then when you get them into the shop, the other half of the use of an EVP is to make sure that what you promise you deliver. Because we know from the research that we've done, and I'm sure you've done similar research or experienced it, the fact that people turn up and work for you and then don't stay very long, sometimes they're just not a great fit, or they had a better offer or something. But in many cases, it's because what they thought they were going to get is not what they actually got. And we do have some research a little later in the program to talk about that. But I do think that EVP is a promise and then a way to commit. And if you think of it in that way, then you won't go too far adrift.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly important. In the last 2.5 years now, just sort of pandemic onwards, because we know that in most areas, UK, US, Europe, that there are not enough good people anymore. For some reason, that there has been a massive talent issue, lots of different reasons for that. And I think that means that people have become pickier. And the longer this goes on for, the more embedded that's going to be. They now expect, they've had the experience of looking for a business that's more than just a step up in pay packet.
Yeah, 100%. They've not been spoiled, because I think that's just unfair, really.
Yeah.
We're all the same. We want the best that we can get. Why wouldn't we? And I think it's not good enough now to rest on your brand name, as some people have done in the past. Oh, well, come and work for IBM, or in my day it was, and nowadays it's Google or Apple or something. No, that's not good enough anymore. You really need to put something around it. And it's not just the money, because the thing with the money is it's quickly forgotten if you're not getting all the other boxes ticked. And increasingly, the younger people, what, Gen Zs and millennials? Are you millennials? I can't remember.
We
We're
are
both
millennials, yeah.
And the Gen Zs coming behind you are looking for, obviously, they want to get money and pay their way, and obviously they do, but they want other things as well. And because there's such a shortage of jobs, they really need these things spelling out. And I don't think, from what I've seen, that too many companies do that very well. Even if they actually have a strong EVP, they don't communicate it in a way that people get it and want to come, particularly at the interview stage and when your agencies are representing your EVP to their candidates. During that stage, there's often a breakdown. The agencies don't really have enough except what the job description is. It's pretty much all they have. So they can't really sell the company as well as the role. And in many cases, when they come, the people interviewing them don't really know what it is either. They know the role because it's their role. And really, this is about, first of all, being able to document what you've got, and then being able to use it in a way that connects with people. And that's really what we're going to focus on today, actually.
Yeah. So if I could summarize, it's basically the sales pitch.
Yeah.
You've got a sales pitch for your product, you've got a sales pitch for working for you. Yeah.
And then when you've got it, then it's, well, okay, I've got that now. That's a promise. I'm going to deliver on that promise. So you keep people, you retain people longer as well.
Yeah. And I mean, just to say as well, everybody, we are going to show you an actual example of what an EVP like this looks like. And it's a template as well. If anybody wants it, we are going to make that available to them as well. So just to say, before we crack on to the next question, Q&A, it's there. Ask questions as you go. I highly recommend asking as you go, because you'll forget the question when we move on to the next subject. Best to put the questions in and we can all move on together then.
Yeah, in the Q&A. So what we got, Kirsty, on the Q&A? Anything?
No, so just mostly people are checking that the Q&A is working. As Pete said, as we go through, feel free to ask them. I will bring them up at various points that we have arranged for Q&A. So ask them as we go along, and I'll make sure to bring them up for you.
All right. Okay.
Wonderful. Right. Well, Mike, let's go down, because I think that's pretty much what everyone expected. You know, we kind of pitched this session as being what we just discussed. Let's go down to the level of detail. Let's get into what actually makes up an EVP.
Okay, well, as we said, there is the basic, the peripheral level and the fundamental level, the baubles and the Christmas tree, right? That's the way to view it. And so let me just quickly run through what these are, and then we can kind of dig in a little deeper. So the baubles are these things: perks that you offer, corporate social responsibility and charity that you do, and social interactions, which, by the way, are becoming more and more important because of this work from home thing, which we'll talk about in a second. Now, the reason that they're the baubles is they're very shiny and very apparent, and you can make quite a big thing of them online, you know, and on your website and what have you. But we know that despite what people might say, they're not actually as that important as you might think. They do have an importance, but on their own, of course, they're not really going to be very much, they're a very compelling way to attract people in. So let's just drill down into these, because what I really want to get to is the tree, because that's where the action is. So let me very quickly look at these. Now, I don't know what perks, it'd be interesting if you can put in the Q&A what perks you offer. That'd be quite an interesting thing. These are just some that we've collected from our clients and from people that we know and did some research online. There are a lot of sample perks that you can deliver. And I think that, like I said, there's one of my clients had got, let me see it in there, Breakout and Amusement Space. He's in town in Birmingham. He's got a sort of half cellar with lights at the top, which are at ground level when you go outside. Very funky room. Set it up, free beer, free optics, a pool table, a whole bunch of stuff in there. For the first 2 weeks, everybody used it. After that, nobody goes down there. And I've been several times to his offices. You go down there. We have our meetings down there, in fact, because no one goes. And I think sometimes perks can be like that. They're quite attractive, quite shiny, but actually people not that bothered really. Yeah. So you kind of have to be a bit careful on that.
They can also backfire as well, can't they, Mike? Because I know the classic one that comes up all the time is nights out and fun events. So you advertising this, we all go out on a Friday night. We all go off once a year. We go on a holiday as a team to like Ibiza or whatever. And then, to me, that would be wait. So I've got 52 weekends a year, all of which are taken up with family, kids, all these other commitments. And now you want me to put aside one for work.
Well, you see, it is a form of discrimination, weirdly. I know, because, I wouldn't do that because I'm old. I'm not interested in any of that. Mind you, who would employ me on that old? I don't know, really. But even you, Pete, I can't imagine, the good lady being cool with you disappearing off for a long weekend, larging it up with your mates, drinking beer. Much as you might be attracted by that.
I could probably be persuaded to pursue that. But it's just, like you say, I think the key thing is what happens sometimes is those perks, somebody goes into a room, looks through the list of perks they've ever heard of and picks the ones that sound like a good idea to them.
Yeah.
When they really kind of need to be taken to the people a little bit, don't they?
You're right. A perk is just a benefit that you don't really have in your contract of employment. That's what a perk is, really. Two things. That's a very good point, Pete. I think if you're going to do perks, and we're going to move on from that now because there's some things we need to get to talk about. But if you're going to do it, I'd suggest that you reach out to your team and find out what would be attractive to them. And I will be amazed if it's not actually the things that cost less money, but take up more of your time. So I've got some examples in a minute, some 2 or 3 that we've used in the past and actually seem to carry a lot of weight, don't cost anything or very little. And I think that's the thing with a perk. It's really not about, the free beer on tap. Although had I been working there in the 90s, of course, that would have been a completely different kettle of fish, but very I'm not.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Mike, by the way, could you just make me host on the panelist, please? Because I might be able to do something with the chat. And while you do that, let me just, let's look at the second one. So the CSR, which for those that don't know, because we're very naughty for 3-letter acronyms, TLAs at TLAs. Corporate social responsibility. So corporate social responsibility activity and charities. What is there to suggest that this actually has an impact?
Well, there's quite a lot of data and research around this. You can find it everywhere. And there's a study in America by Forbes, and they got, I think it was 64% of millennials, so you guys, really wouldn't be prepared to accept a job unless the CSR policy at that company was clear and that they believed in it, right? So it's, we give money to charity or something, not really very firm on it, doesn't work. So I think there is this idea that this is how we give back, really. And I think 83% of the same group in the same survey said that they would be more loyal if they were permitted to be involved in this CSR. So it's not just enough to know that your company gives 1% of its profits away or whatever it is, but actually they want to be involved. And we, in my second business called Crimson, the name of the business is Crimson, we had a thing called the Crimson Foundation, which wasn't a charity. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a charitable arm. It wasn't a registered charity. It was our vehicle. So it had its own brand identity. And it was massive within the firm. We did used to put 1% of our profits into it. The staff can actually have fundraising events themselves and take time off to achieve that. And they decided where the funds went. So we had a theme each year. Could be kids, could be cancer, could be whatever. But then they decided where the money went to. And we handed that over to them, and that did tremendous amount of good internally with our people. But here's the interesting thing. It used to work really well with our clients as well. They wanted to be involved in a lot of these things that we did. And having a brand or an identity, let's call it an identity because I don't like the word brand, having an identity that people could wrap around the Crimson Foundation with its little like red, crimson and blue fancy foundation logo on it really did have an effect. And all the time I was at Crimson, we sold the business a few years ago, they ran it to great effect. You know, so having a CSR policy, we can move on from that then. Having a CSR policy that really does, I suppose, urge people to be part of it, encourage people to be part of it, something they believe in will be a positive thing. But on its own, it's not enough.
Yeah, well, I will just pick up on a point there. I think you made that I don't think calls out in the rest of the presentation. The Crimson Foundation was popular with clients. Clients also like to see a strong EVP in their suppliers.
Yes, yeah.
It means stability. It means they know that you're aligned in vision and things you believe in. They like it. It does really well. In fact,
probably know that people who, if any of you watching this are in the sales front or at the front end, you have to fill in invitations to tender for pieces of work or whatever. There's going to be a thing in there is really what's your corporate social responsibility policy. So I'm not saying whether you have or haven't got one, because I'd be amazed if you didn't have one. All I'm saying is you need to be able to communicate it properly to the people, not just on your Join Us page on your website, but also when people come for an interview and your agencies. So if someone says, well, what's their CSR policy? Can't imagine that many people asking, but if they do, oh, well, let me tell you, I've got that. Yeah. And explain what it is. It's all about that front end, which is what this is about. And that leads us to the next thing, I think, doesn't it? Talking about front end, which is, of course, the social scene.
It does, yeah. Just to say, though, those who haven't picked it up, the chat is now working. I have managed to fix it. So let's just double check, see if you have got any CSR or charities you're very proud of, do please pop them in the chat. We've
had one already, which was somebody plants 100 trees per placement that they make so that they can...
Love it.
Yeah, we've got another one where their charity of choice is Raise Your Hands, which supports several other smaller charities. So there are people out there that definitely do have CSR policies.
Like I said, it's not whether you have or whether you haven't. The point of this isn't, I mean, if you work for a bigger company, you're probably not going to be able to change the CSR policy anyway. What it's about is being able to effectively communicate it directly, the person that does the interview and the agencies, so that they know this information, because if it's called for, it can be used. Now, in terms of the social scene, that's a lot more important these days because that whole work from home thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a real change. One of the big downsides of the work from home, flexible working push is there are a lot of people, single, young, living in flat shares, even people living with family, but desperately rely upon work for that social element to their lives, all struggling with it's becoming, absent in their lives. So talk about this, Mike.
I think there's another thing about this as well, though, which is increasingly coming out. We study this. We like the research on it, and we talk to a lot of people about it. Is that weirdly, when you've got a team that used to work together, physically be together pretty much all the time, they get to know each other socially. I'm not talking about necessarily going out in the evenings, but they might have their sandwiches together at lunchtime, or have that the water cooler chat or whatever. Get to know people a little bit. And so therefore they're more likely to help people when a business challenge comes up because they know them. It's like a mate. Well, can you help me with this? Oh yeah, I'll do that for you. Whereas if you don't know each other, you don't get that level of commitment to what's being done. So I think the social scene is good for people who are working from home, good for their mental health, but also I think it directly impacts the bottom line. So you have to have some kind of social interaction policy, something that this is how we bring our team together and let them form non-work related relationships, personal relationships, so that when at work they need to do stuff, they can do more of it. And also you can come out and have a few beers or whatever it is that you do these days. There is that saying is that a team that plays together stays together. And I think now that's 100% more important than it ever was when we all worked in the same office.
Yeah, and to hark back to what we were saying earlier about it not being discriminatory, not excluding people who perhaps can't do evenings or weekends, making time for it during the day, doing a breakfast or perhaps doing something, but knowing if I want a lot of the team to come, I need to make it a time that a lot of the team can make. And I will say as well, from my own personal experience, perhaps some of us would recognize this, when I used to work in financial services, big projects, we'd have suppliers come in, external parties, and they would always be a little bit stiff upper lip, sticking to the contract. Scope. Very difficult. My mission was always to get them into the pub across the road as fast as possible during that project, because the second we'd all got just a little bit relaxed with one another, or
Do you mean lashed up? Do you mean lashed up?
I do mean lashed up. Yes. The next week. No, I did. The next week. Could you do me this? Of course I can. Yeah, Pete. Anyway, right. So it does make a difference. That point you were saying, it really, really does make a difference.
Well, I know we're going to come to Kirsty in a minute, but in the 90s, we didn't say the team that plays together stays together. In the 90s, we said the team that drinks together stays together. And I know you can't do that now, and it's old-fashioned, and I'm a dinosaur, and blah, blah, blah. But even if you all drink coffee, it's that socialization will impact the way in which people work with each other. And also, we're talking about retention. You know, we're interested in retention. Although people like the idea of working in their back bedroom because they haven't got travelling costs, inconvenience, and they can have tea with their families, and I get all of that. They really do miss this idea of actually building a relationship with other people. So you need a policy. I'm sure you have one. You just need to communicate it to the agencies and to the people that do the interviews so that they can, oh, and by the way, this is how we, so...
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk now. Let's move on a little bit here because, Mike, we have a template for some of this stuff, don't we? Can you show and share that?
I'm not going to show you the whole template because it would take too long, but I'm going to show you the things that we've just talked about. Right? It's the template it's just a PowerPoint document with pages in it and headings on the pages, and you fill it in as you go forward. I'm going to show you a couple of more in a minute, a couple of more bits of it. If you want a copy of this, just put 3 in the chat and we will email one to you. We have your email address, obviously, because you've registered for this. We won't spam you or anything. That's not what we do. This is a sponsored webinar. So we will just email this PowerPoint presentation to you, or template to you, and with a few notes on it as well, so you can implement it. But it's what we use when we work with companies to build their EVPs, mostly agencies we work with, but it's what we use and it's very effective. So, okay. Right, so let us, let me show you that actually. That would be cool, wouldn't it, if I was involved in that. So this is how simple it is. This is about communication, don't forget. Right, we want to be able to communicate very simply. We want to send this to the agencies. Well, actually a nicer version than this, obviously. Right, okay, here's the thing. These are the perks that we have. I just made these up, right? Free drinks and snacks around the office. Everybody that works here gets a free Audible subscription every month, which is £7 or £8. I can't remember how much it costs now. And you can buy any kind of book you like, just one a month. You can listen to it. Well, that's cool. You get a quarterly lunch with the MD or the program manager or whoever the kind of boss of the boss is. And that one, I used to run that one myself in both of the big companies that I had, that I ran. And it was very popular because they get to ask you whatever they want and see you as a human being. So that was quite a cool thing. And of course, we put that one in because I think you need some sort of giveaway. You get your birthday, you can have that off as a free holiday. Corporate social responsibility. I'm breaking these teeth in for the dog. Sorry about that. That's the one pretty much that we use actually here, funnily enough, at Flair, right? Because that's what we believe in. As long as you can represent yours in a couple of sentences is enough. It's okay. Let me tell you how we give back is the thing. So you can imagine at an interview, okay, before we go, let me just tell you how we give back. This is what we do. This is our policy. This is how you can get involved with it if you want to, right? We don't do that because we're a small business, but if you're a slightly bigger business, then yes, you want to get people involved in your charity work because it adds value. And then lastly, we've got that simple social scene. We don't have that. That was lifted from one of my clients. They're all over the place, all over the world. The main man lives in Peru. Some of his team is in Eastern Europe. Some is in Spain. And he's just going to take on some people in the UK now. So they just have a Zoom downer, a Zoom sundowner, which I prefer to call it a Zoom downer, with refreshments that they send out and they get delivered a bottle of wine or whatever. And they have one of those every month and just shoot the breeze. You don't have to go to it if you don't want to, but people do apparently. And then he has a fully expensed quarterly get-together in a hotel in Spain. It's not quarterly for him. It's once a year, just so as you know. People aren't flying in and he's paying for it all. But once a year, he has a big do in the summer and people go and they get to know each other and what have you. So it doesn't matter what it is, as long as you have something, I think is probably the answer to that question. So it's talking to questions. Can we go to questions? If you've got anything on any of the things that we've covered, please let's have them now.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions coming through. Again, as Mike mentioned, if you have any more, keep them coming and I will bring them up. So the best question I think that we've got, or one of the best, a lot of them have been answered as we've gone through, but a great one is, would you make perks bespoke to each employee depending on their individual motivators?
Well, that's interesting. What do you think of that, Pete?
I think it depends upon the size of your team. If you're a small business and you've got a team of less than 10, then yes, a degree of customization can make it very powerful. And it's worth doing because when you've only got a team of 10, one person leaving, almost regardless of who they are, can be massively disruptive. So the time you're investing to kind of just tweak things a little bit, very good, but it is a balancing act of making it fair. Well, they've got that and that's better than what I've got kind of thing. I think once you get past a team of that size, I would try and keep to a generic set of perks. But perhaps what you can do is I think, Mike, I saw this on the slide deck. You had a sort of a points-based system.
Yes, I was going to bring that in.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to talk about that? Because you've seen that before.
Came from one of our clients, a big agency. We don't normally deal with big agencies, but we were dealing with them. And it came from them. And what they had was you got so many points and they had a list of perks and each perk had a number of points to it. And you got so many points a month and you could earn more points by being fabulous. I'm not going to go into the detail of it all really. And then you could spend your points on whatever you wanted. And that worked really, really well. I mean, they loved it actually. And so much so, I'm only telling you about it, A, because I had permission to do so, and B, they're not backwards in coming in forward in telling people this exists. So it's out there, but it worked really well for them. So good, great question.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's all the other ones have sort of been answered as we've gone through. So just a reminder, if you want that template, pop a 3 in the comments. But otherwise, Mike, I think it's time to move on to the next section.
Okay.
Okay. Well, in that case, let me take control back. Let's talk. So on your analogy, we had the baubles and the tree, and the baubles you said were the lesser element of this. Talk to us about the tree, the fundamental aspects of a role, and why they are more important, perhaps, than the baubles.
Okay. All right. Let's just show you this. Right. So the baubles we know, and you don't underestimate them. Have them, because otherwise your Christmas tree doesn't look very attractive. But really, without the tree, the baubles are just a pile of coloured lights in the corner, not really very attractive either. So this is research that we found, and we're going to share some of it with you in a second or two as to why this is important. So mission, strategy, values and goals. Now, again, this isn't to say you don't have those. Of course you do. If you're a bigger company, of course you're going to have them. It's how you communicate them to the agencies who are representing you out there, or to your internal talent team, if that's what you have. Or alternatively, the hiring managers who are doing the interviews, or the HR people, whoever it is, that can actually begin to talk about this. Now, I'm going to dig deeper into those in a second. I'm going to show you some examples so you can see, but that's a really important one. Remuneration package, obviously. Now, it depends how you view this. So clearly, if there's a role, there's going to be a remuneration package for the role, and it's probably going to vary. But you do have some generic things that sit on top. They're like, okay, this is our policy in terms of, say, base salary and commission if you're hiring a salesperson, or this is how the additional benefits that we put in, and this is how you earn those additional benefits. So it's more of a policy rather than individuals, because they will come for each of the roles, right? The same goes, the opposite is for career and personal development. That's universal. If you come here, then this is how we'll work. This is how you'll get promoted and develop yourself. And the same for working practices and management. Now, we're going to talk about those in a second, but I really want to just dig into this mission, strategy and values. Now, this, as you can say, came from a Glassdoor survey that was done. I don't know whether anyone goes onto Glassdoor, but it's a really interesting place to go and see what people are saying about you. This was done recently, 2021. So it is quite a recent one. And this isn't for the United Kingdom, as you can see there. So if you're tuning in from abroad, and I think some people are from North America, then it might be a little different for you. But basically, the compensation and benefits came out last in this group, which I was surprised with, but it's a lot of data they've gathered, so who knows. But certainly things like the cultures and the values and your senior leadership. Where is this business going? Have I got confidence in these people to lead me where I want to go? And career opportunities, obviously, we're going to talk about those in a minute. These are the things that clearly matter. So even if you said compensation and benefits were the most important thing, And for some people, they probably are. You're still going to need the other things because they're like really important for people.
I think the best way to think about that one is to think about most of us at some point in our lives have done a job we hated. Sometimes early, sometimes making a career change, poor choice. Most of us have done a job we've hated at some point. Ask yourself how much money they would have had to have paid you for you to suddenly become happy with that job.
You couldn't. Well, you could for 20 minutes.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
I was bought off once. I know. I know. When in the 80s, when I started in IT, which was where I began to work, or computing as it was called in those days, DP, data processing. Well, when I started, there was a massive shortage of people with the skills that I had, and they were constantly being, even worse than now, really being headhunted and badgered. And I took a role, and then my boss called me in and said, well, I'm not going to do the accent, but I am actually, he was from Devon. Mike, we don't want you to go, so what will it take for you to stay? So I thought of a number and gave it to them, and he said, yeah, right then, which made me think it should have been a bigger number, actually. Anyway, I'd left within 3 months because it doesn't undo the reason that you want to move, really. So I think that survey probably comes from that angle, really. Is money's fine, but if that's all you've got, it's not enough.
No.
And you need to not only have this stuff, you need to present it to the outside world, and you need to educate the people that are representing your company with candidates so that they know what it is and they can express it properly. That's the key thing. That's the point of doing all of this, really.
Yeah, and I think, can I just ask as well on this one, Mike, because it comes up time and time again when we do this. This mission, the strategy, the values, these aren't necessarily the same as your customer-facing ones, are they?
No, they don't have to be, actually. Weirdly, that's a very good statement. And we could spend a lot of time talking about this, but I'll try and summarize it. We know that values, say company values, which everyone's proud of, and they're in the tea room wall and on the website and everything. We know that not a lot of your clients are that bothered about them, really. So if you're hired to do a piece of work for somebody, that's what they're interested in, right? That's what they want, the piece of work doing. And they want it done well, and they want it done for the right price, and they want a good quality performance, and they want it to be easy for them, very convenient for them. So your values, yeah, it's interesting, yeah, tell me what they are, but they're quickly forgotten. For staff, that's not the case. They want, in many cases, particularly younger people, Gen Z and millennials, they want to know whether your values and my values are pretty much the same. Because they know if they're not, then this relationship probably doesn't have longevity. So values very much internally. Same goes for the strategy. We're not talking about a strategy which is like 3 pages long. It's very much, look, let me tell you, you come and join this company, right? This is what we're going to do, right? And this is how we're going to do it. And here's the interesting thing. In larger businesses, if you're a department in a larger business and you're interviewing to bring people in, you can have a departmental mission. And you can have a departmental strategy. So yeah, we're doing all this stuff, which is great. But let me tell you what, you come here, this is what we're going to do. And this is exactly how we're going to do it. If you buy into this and you get these values, you can work for me, because I'm telling you now, right, this will change your world. It is really about the sales of a role. I accept that, but it's sales of a role that you can deliver on.
That's a really important distinction with EVPs. It's very easy for marketing to go into a room and come up with a very, very impressive EVP that bears very little resemblance to the reality of what the employees experience. It has to be deliverable. Better to have less and nail it than ambitious and fall short, because people will be disappointed.
Let me bring up, let's illustrate this now. So I'm going to show you some more screens from the template now. So if you want it to put a 3 in the chat, we'll send it to you. So let me just bring this up. This, if I can press the right button. I've only been using Zoom now for, I don't know, 5 years or whatever it is, since it came out, actually. Didn't know what buttons to press. There you go. Right, so we can see that, can we?
Yes, we can.
They're all good. Okay, so there's a thing called a first choice mission statement. Clearly, if your business has a mission, fine. If it's like 8 pages long, or even three or 4 sentences, well, that's probably too big, really. So you need to be able to simplify it into this. And the first choice really is about answering these questions. What do you do? Who do you do it with? And, you know, what must you become to be their first choice supplier? And that comes in the strategy, which I'll look at in a second or two. So, okay, here's mine. And we will be, this is ours, by the way, we will be the first choice growth consultancy for owners of small and medium-sized, micro-sized recruitment companies who want to scale up, which they do, so that business can meet their personal needs, but they're not wedded to the 360 model. So this is about pushing away as many people as it's attracted. If you're into that space, then the chances are we can do some great things, because we want to be the person that you go to first in that space. It's a challenge. Is it doable? Yeah, it is. Is it easy? No, it's not. But you can see, if I want to bring someone in, everybody wants to be the first at something. So just being, and everybody wants to feel that it's doable. If we wanted to be the first choice consultancy in the world, we just never do it, because there's like a gazillion American companies that spend huge amounts of money and got loads of people. We just wouldn't do it. So have a mission statement that you can communicate to people via other people, don't forget, that actually, you know what, yeah, I fancy that, I could do that. Then you're into the strategy, which is really how you're going to do it. So again, this is, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send this one out. So this is an example one, but I'll send this one out to you. So it's a template, but it's got stuff in it, if that makes sense. You can easily delete this if you want to. But this is, so you can imagine being in a meeting, imagine yourself in an interview. So let me tell you, if you come here, what we'll be doing. Let me be very clear on this. Hit them with a mission statement. Not reading it, or you just, out it comes, right? Let me tell you how we're going to do it. And it doesn't matter if you miss some of these things, because they'll never know, right? So let me tell you, first of all, we're going to build a team which is top notch. We're going to invest in their training. We're going to invest in their well-being, mental well-being. We're going to invest in the tools that they have, and we are going to make them fabulous at what they do. And you can be one of those people. Next thing we're going to do is we are obsessed with quality. So we measure it, we improve it all the time. We want to know what our external stakeholders think, our clients, if you're an internal department, what the rest of the business thinks. We are obsessed with it, and we are continually improving. And as a byproduct, so will you. I'm not going to go through the rest, but you see how this is used. It's very compelling. It's very attractive.
It's part of that pitch. It's somebody who's working in a business as a hiring manager, getting excited about this mission, this strategy. And I think the bit that you kind of can't put on here, because it depends per role, doesn't it, Mike? You're going to have them kind of say, well, when we get there, it means this to us. When we're first choice, it means we get to charge more, or we get the pick of the really juicy work. And when we deliver this, this is what it is for us to invest in quality. You've got this. It comes to life.
It does, really. When I used to interview people, in the past, and all the companies that I've had, I don't do it now because we're not really a scalable business, but when I used to interview people, the first meeting I used to be in the pub almost always, or a coffee bar, we would say now. And it was all this. We didn't talk about the job, didn't talk about, what they wanted to necessarily get out of their career, although that would naturally come out as I'm talking about this, because is this what you want is the question? Because if it isn't, don't come, because this is what you're going to get. But all of those first discussions would be around this. It was relatively easy then. I'd either got them or they hadn't. And if I'd got them, if they really bought into all of this, then, oh, by the way, this is what the job is and this is what we're paying you. Yeah, that's fine. Because they're bought into something that I want them to buy into, which is the future. And you do too, really. You want people to come and work in your business and stay there, obviously. You want to hire in 12 months' time again to replace them. And this is the stuff that does it. But you've got to build this centrally and then educate people in how this works.
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to have to step in quickly because I know what we've got left to cover. And you touched on a point there, which was quite important: remuneration. So we've got the mission, the strategy, the values and the goals. We've touched on the values should be, meaningful. I think my favorite one is Huel's. Forgive my French, everybody. Don't be a dick, which is the greatest value I've ever seen in a company. But can we move on to the next steps here and talk about remuneration? Because obviously it does matter. It's a necessary number, and inflationary pressures are
okay. Yeah. Now I'm going to keep this fairly lightweight. The main purpose of this was to help people attract and bring people in. And the thing with remuneration, it normally is what it is. It's the one thing you can't really control. In a bigger organization, it is what it is, really. That's what we pay for the job, right? So there's not much you can really communicate about it. But what I wanted to talk about was some of the things that people do seem to care about. So let me just bring this up, because this is quite an interesting thing. This is a survey that we did. It's original research on LinkedIn. And we asked people, if you have a choice of 3 jobs, which are pretty much the same extra remuneration schemes, which would you choose? And as you can see, pretty much 80% of people, or 78% of people, I guess it is, said that they would go for a much higher basic and then either a lower commission or a team bonus. only 22% said that they would go for a lower basic and a higher on-target earnings. In other words, higher commission. And the reason that this is interesting is when we looked at who those 22% were, which you can do, and this is over, okay, it's not huge amounts of votes, 387, nearly 400 votes, but when we looked at them, almost all of those people owned their own businesses.
At 22%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And you just think, well, yeah, I get that. I would probably have gone for that because I'm quite capable of doing it. But the vast majority want to be able to earn their money and know what they're going to be able to spend each month. That's what they really want. They want to be able to get a mortgage based on their base salary. So all I'd say when you're thinking of how you represent your commission scheme is to have some thought about your remuneration scheme, is to have some thought about the way in which people would use it and want it. And if you get the opportunity, certainly with things like bonus schemes and what have you, bigger basic, smaller variable part seems to be a watchword. Yeah. The other thing around this is things like share option schemes. Certain people have got no interest in share option schemes. Those people that imagine that they will stay longer and commit more usually are. So if you're a smaller business and you've got control over this, my viewpoint would be to definitely implement a share option scheme, 100%, because it's something that, in fact, we did a whole show on this, Kirsty, didn't we?
It is on the LinkedIn Live on our channel. Yeah, we did a show. We had somebody come in and talk about the various options that you can go through.
You think you'd be able to find it and just put the link into the chat so people can see that. So sorry, Pete, you were going to say.
I was just going to say I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to start pushing you a little bit now, Mike. I think some of the other things I think that really come out, some research was done recently. We worked with several of the sponsors of this show. So if you're here following an invite from one of our sponsors, reach out to them because they have this information. They did some sort of bespoke research in their areas. And one of the things that I think surprised me, because the US, I knew health insurance was quite important. I was quite surprised by how important it was becoming in the UK as well.
Particularly family health insurance, so not just for the employee, but for their family as well. And things like anything that involves holiday or downtime, because people want more of it.
Well, this is the interesting thing. In the UK right now, they're doing a 4-day week experiment. Loads of different companies all piling in. The preliminary sort of feedback is coming out from these companies. Most of them are saying, yeah, we'll carry this on because productivity is the same or gone up and everyone's happier. Given that, 4-day weeks, a lot of hours, offering quite generous holiday time without adjusting, targets and so on, 30, 34, 35 days holiday, that can be very hard to leave and very attractive to people. And they will still, if they can do it in 4-day week, they'll definitely do it with an extra week's holiday a year. So I think holidays are one of the untapped, very low cost ways to really make an attractive.
I think you're right, actually. So sorry. I think you're right, actually. And let me just press that button there, there you go. Sorry about that. This is a live show. What can I say? It's on mute, but something over there wasn't, so it's a bit embarrassing. Anyway, no, but this is exactly right. When you look at the benefits package, because that's what this is part of now, really, you can be a lot more creative with the things that you offer that tick a box for those people, especially who've got families. That seems to be an area where you're quite rich in possible benefits, that although they could earn more money somewhere else, the overall deal that you can offer is better with you. And that's the key thing. It's not one thing. If people are motivated by money, I tell you now, sooner or later they will leave because somebody will offer them a bigger gig somewhere else. Okay, fine. But you're looking for basically a composite set of benefits which tick a load of these internal boxes, especially with what we're going to talk about in a second, which is career and personal development. But this is a key thing, because if you can do that, it's like, well, I could earn more, but you know what? I think I'll stay. And that's really where it's at. And attracting people, of course, it's exactly the same. Look at all of this. We know what your life is like, and look what we're doing for you. So I think it is important to do that.
Yeah, I agree. So obviously we're going through quite a lot here. We've got some more to go into. If you have any questions of anything we've discussed, please pop them into the chat. As I said, they're only visible to myself, Kirsty, and Mike. But while anybody does that, let's move on to the next section, because career and personal development, I'm really excited about, because I know how strong this is in making people join.
It came out in the survey, didn't it? The guys, the sponsors did. It came out in that survey, and And we know there's a little bit of research I'll just show you, which was, I think, came from Total Jobs and Gallup. I think these two sets of data that I'm going to show you. So is training important to employees? I mean, look at that data, right? Yeah, it absolutely is. Those are really big numbers around training and career development. Particularly, I think that the audience for this was again millennials and Gen Z. Certainly millennials, not sure about Gen Z. But look at that; it's massively important. And then this, you know, this was the Gallup poll. So 4,300 workers said they aren't getting the training that they feel is necessary for the job. I mean, look at those two sets of data. One is it's like massively important and I would go, and the other one is I'm just not getting it. So I think when you think of your, you know, the whole point of your EVP is to create that shop window. This has to be front and center in there. You know, this is what we do. This is how we support you. This is your career path. Right? This is how you get from one to the next. These are the things that you can do against each of those levels to get you to the next level, This is the training and support that we give you. This is the coaching we give you. Now, for the EVP, for this purpose, clearly that will all be in your staff handbook and your HR department. What we're talking about here is how can you communicate that to the agencies so that they can then communicate it on, and also how can you communicate it to your interviewers, the people that would do the interviews, so that they can get really excited about this and watch to see if the candidate is also getting excited about it because they know they're onto a winner. That's the battle area. Particularly if you're in a bigger company, you can't change this. It is what it is. Then it's how you communicate it, and you can change that 100%.
Awesome. So career development, lots on that out there. I don't think we're going to dwell too long on it. Just as I said, Mike, it's about presentation and getting people excited about what you do have. Let's look at one of the other, you know, there's that classic phrase, people don't leave a bad job, they leave a bad manager.
True.
So let's talk about working practices and management.
Okay, we're going to keep this simple as well because they are what they are. Again, these are policies that you can't probably control that much in a bigger business. In a smaller business, you absolutely can. But you've got the two really big ones really are the work from home policy, which we know is like a thing now. Had we been doing this webinar 3 years ago, wouldn't have been a thing. But we absolutely know that it is now. I mean, what's your take on that, Pete?
It's not going to go away. It's simply too big a proportion of the workforce have embraced it, loved it. And while in the long term, it may have some detrimental effects they don't anticipate, which I think may happen, for the most part, it really works well with modern life. So I don't think work from home, 5 days in the office, I don't think we're ever going to go back to the place where that majority happens. I do think some of the pain points of work from home are starting to become more and more real.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people in bigger organizations that we've worked with in the past have said the junior team just aren't getting up to speed fast enough because they're not getting that unplanned exposure.
Learning by osmosis.
They're just not sat next to the senior person and just picking bits and bobs up. No plan. It just happens over time. That's not happening. Career progression. If you're in the office and you're not in the office tends to just get more opportunities. All of these things can be fixed. It's just that they're harder to do.
You have to do them consciously, don't you?
Really conscious, where previously they were subconscious. So I think that's my view.
Well, what we're seeing, I think that goes as well for how you manage people, what kind of KPI system you use, how people are interested in that. Also, I think autonomy is quite of a big thing. So, you know, are you going to micromanage people? What's your policy? So what we're talking about for the EVP is more of the policies rather than the detail, so that you can communicate someone into an interview or somebody deciding whether they want to come for an interview, whether this is the right role for them. And it's the policy. This is our policy on work from home. And this is how we get round these issues that we've identified with work from home. Lots of benefits, lots of drawbacks, and this is what we're doing about it. This is building a credible case layer by layer by layer. And I've interviewed, I reckon, over 1,000 people in my career. I'm working it out for another presentation I'm doing fairly soon. And over that period, I've got better and better at it, as we all do, I suppose, 10,000 hours or whatever. And I think a lot of it is this ability to layer the case to come and join us. It's not one thing, come with us and we'll pay you the most money. Well, okay, They probably will, but then they'll be off again. I want people who are going to deliver, people who want to work the way in which we want to work, mostly people that will stay. And this is the approach to do it, 100%.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I would say one other thing on this one, management style. People leave managers, and most managers, feeding back, it's all a loop. Most managers aren't trained to be managers. They were good at a job and they got promoted up until the point where they stopped doing the job and became managers and didn't know what they were doing. That's very, very common. So in this part where you talk about this in your EVP, if you do have management training, if you do invest in making those people better, learning to delegate, setting boundaries and all of those things, really talk about that during this EVP piece, because it will get people to sit up and pay attention, because most of us have worked for a manager that didn't know what they were doing and it was unpleasant. So if you've got great management style, really, really bang the drum about it. Even though it doesn't sound that sexy, it will appeal to people.
To some people it does, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, Kirsty, would you rather we came for questions now, or would you rather we finished and then came to questions?
We've got two, and I think one leads on to the next question. So if we have it now, and then if there's any left over, we might run over at the end and save them for the end. But we've got one. So one
we're
is
normally good at timings, aren't we? We normally hit the timing.
We are normally pretty good. So how do you keep an EVP alive within a business rather than just have it as a tick box exercise? So just have it on a piece of paper somewhere. We've got one, but never actually do it. How do you?
That's a really good question, isn't it? Really, that is a really good question. Well, I think the first thing to say is an EVP. If I send you this template out and you fill it in, spend some time to fill it in with the team and with the HR department and yada yada, and you basically got a communications document, because that's what it is, right? Well, that's fine, but if you don't train people to use it, and then when people come in, measure whether that was actually done properly. So did the agency tell you these things? Because we've got a checklist. They should have told you these things. No, they didn't. Well, you probably need to go back to the agency and re-educate them then, or perhaps pick another agency, because the agency, the strength of the agency in being able to represent your business is very important. So the better they do it, the more candidates you'll get. Likewise, when people come for an interview, afterwards you can have a little debrief. Did they talk about this? Did you feel that you understood this? Did they communicate this? And interestingly, if someone turns down an offer, right, then it's a good idea to be able to ask your agencies to do a simple Q&A to find out why they didn't take it. Whereas not many people do that. It's like, well, okay, they didn't want it. Well, fine, they can clear off, we'll get someone else, which is fine, good attitude. But I think to be able to truly understand why it didn't work is important. So to go back to the original question, yes, you've got to build it, but then you've got to communicate it, which we can talk about in a second. But you've also got to train people to use it. And they have to believe in it every bit as much as you. Like, go to somebody at the coffee machine and say, tell me what our mission is. Not that you would ever do it, but as a metaphor, really. Right. What's the mission? What are we here for? Tell me what it is. And everybody should be saying roughly the same thing. And you know, then it's embedded.
Just to add to that as well, to keep it alive, it's got to be authentic and it's got to come from the top.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so we have two more questions left. One which leads nicely into the next section. So do you want the other question first, or?
Yeah, do the other one first.
So the other one is, before you start your EVP, would you survey your current workforce to see what's important to them around EVP?
I definitely would, yeah. It's not always possible for various reasons. And some people, there are political reasons why you wouldn't do that. If the feeling is quite bad, if the EVP is very weak, the delivery of the EVP is quite weak and the morale is quite bad, then that's all that's going to do is stir up, a lot of trouble, which you probably could argue.
Throw on top of this as well, beware, Henry Ford said, if I asked them what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. Just position your survey that you're investigating. You're not asking for recommendations, because what they say they want and what they actually need to be happy may not be the same thing. So I would also touch on them to say, what's the best employee benefits you've ever heard of across the market from your friends, your family? Go fishing, because that may in fact be more insightful.
The research, there's plenty of it out there. Plenty of it out there that you can read. And you'll see that it all starts. In fact, we've got a document on this. Do you remember we did that research? We went out to all those people, all those different companies that had done research, like PwC and all that.
Yes, you did a document on what millennials want from.
That's right. We did. If anybody wants that, stick a 4 in the chat, and we'll send that as well. It's just a PDF document. I just thought about that. Yeah.
Okay. So, fantastic. Kirsty, all right. So we've got the last question, which leads very nicely into the next section, which is, how should you present or launch your EVP to staff to maximize the impact and get buy-in? So I think that leads nicely into this next section.
Yeah, this is real simple, right? This is real simple. Let me show you. Here we go. Let me just put this in there and put that on there. There we go. Okay. Three things really. I'm amazed at how few people have a very, very compelling Join Us page with a video on it, preferably, or a couple of videos. If you want to see a really good example of this, I suggest you go and look at Michael Page. If you Google Michael Page, UK, I'm not sure about whether that's for everybody, but in the UK, Michael Page, Join Us. And it's a really cool way that they do it. They really represent it very well. So because we know that a vast majority of people will look, I mean, I can't remember the exact percentages. I think it's about 83% of people will look online before they accept an offer or an interview, and they better see what they get. So having a Join Us page, which makes it very clear what your policies are on the key EVP topics that we've covered, is going to be a tick in the box. And remember, when you're writing that, less is more. Not big reams of words, blocks of text, bullet points, and make it as short as you possibly can so people are getting it, right? It's only a tick in a box. Yes, I'll go to the interview. That's all it is, right? The second thing is social media posts. People will look to see what you're posting, not just your company. If they find out the manager, the person who they're going to be interviewed by, they'll go and look and see what they're posting. And again, Michael Page do this really well. They have an Instagram account which is just for EVP. So lots of pictures being people promoted on social events, doing stuff that, you know, for charity and all this sort of stuff. So, and they love it, and people will find it. And when they see that, it's like, yeah, they say they do this, and look, blow me down, they do. So you must promote things online so that when people search, as they will, what they see is what they expect to see. The other thing you can do is targeted LinkedIn adverts. So you know the kind of people that you want to attract. So it's very simple and very easy to build a LinkedIn advert which just targets those people with parts of your EVP. Now, it's a very subtle way of doing it, but you can gradually do it over time. It costs hundreds rather than thousands of pounds. It can be done quite cheaply.
Oh, phenomenally cheaply. Yeah, you can get an ad out there for 50 quid and you'll be able to judge from it how well it landed, what you can take a lot of learning from it, and you'll easily hit thousands of people for that kind of money as well.
Yeah, I mean, you should get a lot of support from your agencies for doing this. It's their job really to advise you and help you, which is why we're being sponsored by agencies that do. So I think you should work with your agencies to get this up and running, particularly around things like LinkedIn adverts, because they use LinkedIn a lot. So they'll know how to put your message out there for you and work with you to make sure that it's reaching the right people and it's ticking the right boxes. Because if you do that, if you do those three things and nothing else, I'm not saying that's all you can do, but if you just do those three things, it will make a big impact.
Yeah, and I think I would just throw on top of that, what you're looking to do is you're looking to show people your EVP in action, not tell them what it is.
Yes,
Using
very true.
Real team stories, real employee stories. That's a very rich vein you can just constantly go back to get that kind of message out there. Well, Mike, we've managed to hit the key points we wanted to hit. Kirsty, I don't know. Do we have time for some more questions?
No, I think we've hit the main ones. A lot of the questions that we've had have already been answered. So I think, Mike, it's time for a summary.
Okay, so an EVP is essentially a shop window. It's where you're going to offer the world what they can get if they come and work for you. So it's got to be attractive. It's got to be very easy to absorb, not too wordy, not too complex. And it then becomes a contract. So this is what we're offering. And don't forget, like I said, you really need to train your agencies and work very close with them so that they understand how to promote your business best, and to work with the people that do the interviews, because that interview will make a big difference as to whether that candidate accepts the job or not. So they have to put a lot of effort into making sure that EVP is represented properly. It then becomes a contract. Okay, so we promised this. So you must make certain that your individual promises that you've made are kept. How are you going to make sure that someone has that career progression, gets that training, has those appraisals? Because if you don't, all that's going to happen is people are going to think, well, I was promised this, but I'm not getting it. I'm going to leave, or at least they're vulnerable. Excuse me. The baubles are obviously very important because they're attractive and shiny, but they're not that critical when it comes to making decisions. What certainly is things like the mission, the values, the strategy, and of course the goals that you promote. So making sure that you've really nailed those is absolutely crucial. And then of course, when you've got them, when you're proud of your EVP, don't hide that under a bushel. get that out there in as many channels as you can. So when people Google you, which they will, and look you up on LinkedIn, which they will, what they see is what they expect. And then to be honest with you, I think it's a good deal easier to attract and retain those high value staff that you were looking for.
I think that's a fantastic summary there, Big Mike.
That's about it. So let me first of all thank the sponsors again for enabling us to put this on. Thank you, guys. I hope everybody that valued this, or everyone that attended valued this. Just as we're wrapping up, if you just put something in the chat, just what you got, the thing that you got most from it, that would be pretty groovy. Just put that in, type that in whilst we just say our goodbyes. We pretty much hit time. So let me just thank you, Peter, for being my foil today. It's been a great help as usual.
It's been a pleasure, as ever. We could probably have done 2 hours on this, quite happily bouncing back and forth, but I think we managed to restrain ourselves well enough.
And I'd also like to thank our chat master, who I see was busily typing away as we were doing the thing. This running these webinars, it looks a lot easier than it actually is. And it's not me. I do my thing. It's relatively simple. But for Kirsty to do hers, it's a big deal. So thank you very much, Kirsty.
Thank you very much. And thank you for everybody for chatting with me in the chat today. It was a lovely way to spend a Tuesday afternoon.
Good, splendid. Okay, so just before we close, so you're going to get a recording of this, and you'll get the two things those people have asked for. Them are going to get the two things that they promised. It may well come from the sponsors. I don't know how we'll do it really, but whatever. We'll think of some ways that you get it, but you will definitely get all of those things within the next couple of days or so. How long before we get the recording, Kirsty?
Hopefully it should be ready by tomorrow morning.
Okay, so certainly by the end of the week it'll be with you. Okay, well, thank you once again, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Bye.